This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello and welcome to the KJ Show on my new YouTube channel, the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, or Dr. KJ, energy expert. And today I am talking about some really fun stuff in the honor of Halloween, because this is the orangest thing I have. Basically some energy horror stories, because there are a few out there. And not surprisingly, sometimes they get swept under the rug, but I think we need to be aware of them. And I'm also going to do a shameless promotion for my book, Your Energy Savings Handbook, because guess what? I have a whole chapter on how to slay energy vampires. But I'll get to that later. Right now, I want to start with my favorite section, one of my favorite sections, that is breaking news, as in you cannot make this stuff up. And I got some more breaking news next week. I can't wait to share. But heat pumps have been long regarded as a solution to getting people from switching to electricity rather than fossil fuels. In fact, I was in a meeting yesterday where they were talking about how it was really important to get heat pumps installed in low-income housing to help with the electrification push, and even though it is more expensive. And guess what? Heat pumps are not meeting their installation goals, because guess what? They're too expensive. So there's been, in Britain, actually had a whole policy in the United Kingdom really promote heat pumps and really think that that was going to be a solution to getting rid of their reliance on fossil fuels. But the the estimates of how much they're going to actually install are basically not happening. Moreover, they thought that the cost would reduce between 20 and 25% by 2030, but no, that hasn't happened either. So the UK and other countries, I'm sure, are also falling short of their goals to promote this, quote, energy-saving device that actually uses electricity and in some cases is not as popular as current furnaces and standard heating and cooling systems. Now, I, in full disclosure, was involved very heavily in the geothermal heat pump industry for several years and still am a big fan. Geothermal heat pumps are completely different. These heat pumps are air source heat pumps, and they have mixed reviews. They claim that they can work in cold climates, kind of, sort of, but they're not the same as a furnace. And you have to have electric resistance backup heat just in case the heat pump fails, which electric resistance backup heat is very expensive. So domestic heat pumps are actually playing a marginal role in heating in the UK, and it's not expected to be anything better than that. Researchers say the need highlights for policy aspirations to be based on realistic assessments. Oh, wow, what a thought. And to develop incentives that could actually bring down the price. But there's been no significant reduction, according to this study, in the average installed cost of heat pumps in the past decade. And their prospects for reduced installation costs aren't going to happen either. So in other words, heat pumps, although they were really promoted heavily in England, aren't really taking off. And the answer is quite simple. Not only is it more expensive, it also isn't really well equipped for the damp, cold climate of Britain. I mean, heat pumps were really originated in the South, and that makes more sense given their weather patterns. Somehow the Scottish moors don't really bode well for heat pumps. So the University of Edinburgh School of Social and Political Science says there's a growing policy consensus that heat pumps will play a role in decarbonizing homes, but we have to have realistic expectations. Always a good idea to have realistic expectations. And then another thing, and this is a graph I have up. Apparently, there's been a war on cows, and I've been talking about cows and how we're not supposed to eat cows on Monday and meatless Mondays, and it's been a whole big thing. And I've actually, in my Substack, have written about how grass-fed beef actually creates more carbon than feedlot beef. Well, guess what? It's true. So there's another article in Anthropocene magazine that said that they did an analysis of 3,500 U.S. cities and found that the carbon hoofprint can vary depending on where it is produced and where it's eaten. Well, what do you think? So, researchers found that a person's hoof print or meat related carbon emissions can vary more than 3 times depending on what city they got the meat from and where they source the meat from and where they're eating the meat. In other words, if they're getting an organic fed meat, beef, it probably is going to create carbon emissions because they're from farther away. So, okay, all those organic farmers out there who are claiming to save the world, guess what? Your meat actually produces more carbon emissions. Stuff you never hear about in the real world, is it? They also said that highlights the interconnectedness between urban and rural spaces, according to Benjamin Goldstein, a University of Michigan paper researcher. And he said that these results revealed a vast and tangled web linking cities to hundreds of rural communities, each with different farming methods. Yeah, isn't that why their promotion of go local was always the thought? But apparently it says that beef can, where you get it, can actually affect the carbon intensity of beef. Beef sourced from grazing systems, like those beautiful sustainable farms that we want and regenerative farms that we are promoting for, carry higher emissions than the feedlot beef because grass-fed cattle, wait for it, produce more methane. Meanwhile, cities sourcing beef from dairy regions where the cows are at their end of their life have lower emissions. So they require fewer resources since the cows are raised purposely for meat. So basically, methane captures can also make a difference. So in other words, New York, for some reason, has lower carbon emission beef than, say, parts of Michigan. Residents in one state, in Richmond, Missouri, had the largest individual meat impact, 1,700 kilograms of CO2 per person, 3 times higher than in Michigan, which has had 500. So the point is that where you eat your meat and where you get your meat can actually have an influence on the carbon emissions. At the end of the day, it's sort of silly, but you know what? Meatless Monday isn't as easy as one would think. I'm Dr. Kathryn Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me, my new YouTube channel, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new show with Dr. KJ. And today I'm talking about some energy horror stories. I want to start with some renewable energy horror stories, like the heat pump sort of is one of them, even though it's not renewable. We have a lot of other renewable energies horror stories, and they're usually mostly from overseas because Europe, sort of got sucked into this notion that they had to get away from fossil fuels and they had to switch to renewables and wind and solar. Except they didn't fast enough and they still relied on Russian gas, but never mind practicalities. So I wanted to sort of revisit some of these horror stories that haven't been necessarily shared, but probably should be. So I love this graphic. Thank you, ChatGPT, because I said, please make me a horror story graphic with all the different renewable energies. And it's true. They really are scary things. So first of all, Germany, who was really leading out in the pack, they were the first ones in Europe to sort of say, okay, we're going to go all in on green. In fact, they shut down their nuclear power plants, which was absolutely ridiculous. And people actually froze to death because they didn't have enough heat. And then they ended up by shutting down their nuclear power plants. The wind and solar couldn't provide enough electricity to keep them warm and provide them light. So they used candles and burning wood. So guess what? They ended up having to rely on Russian gas. So cutting off your nuclear power supply probably wasn't a good idea. So anyway, what happened is they had this whole new thing called I can't pronounce German anymore, but it was basically a master plan that was going to have them basically replace all of their fossil fuels with wind and solar. The problem is, it didn't work because wind and solar don't always work. They're not necessarily the most reliable because the sun doesn't shine at night and the wind doesn't always blow. And then on top of that, the prices of electricity went way high up. They said that basically they couldn't afford to switch to renewable energy because it cost too much. And with the Ukraine war and their reliance on Russian fuel, they have now realized that they have to go back to nuclear and liquefied natural gas for their energy thing. So much for their idea, right? Getting out in front, not so much. Another problem, and this is actually a little closer to home, though not so surprising, is that California also put their eggs in the renewable basket, and they thought that they had such a dependence on solar and wind that they'd had all kinds of outages. And I know John can talk about that. California has aggressively pushed this renewable energies, but they haven't addressed the fundamental problem of fixing the grid. So they have no reliability, and they've had all kinds of outages. And as well as they've had a lot of that solar energy that was produced by wind and PVs is wasted because they don't have the battery capacity to capture it in the off-peak times. So the wind may blow at night, but they don't have the battery ability to store it for use during the daytime. So now here they've gone and built up all these solar and renewable wind projects and solar PVs, but they don't have enough grid reliability to deliver it, so they're still getting outages. It's absolutely ridiculous. The state's reliance on renewables over traditional fuels, or even nuclear for that matter, continues to create outages, shortages, and of course, increasingly high electric bills, which people can't afford. So it sounds like a great plan, doesn't it? Let's put all our eggs in that basket. Another one is the UK also, and not just the UK, but also many, many countries are now realizing that wind turbines aren't working either. They don't make economic sense. The problem with wind turbines is that they face several challenges because lately the costs have been rising with the material costs and the financing cost and the time to get approvals. So now the government policies have failed to account for inflation and supply chain disruptions, which makes the wind power turbines in UK financially unfathomable or untenable. It's also happening here in the United States. Ørsted, which is a huge Danish wind turbine manufacturer, has had several projects canceled in the United States, partly because of Trump, and he doesn't like wind farms because they kill birds and they're ugly, and he doesn't like them. And a lot of people don't like them either, including the people that are very wealthy liberals living off Martha's Vineyard. So wind turbines are bad. They kill birds. They disorient whales, but they also are really becoming very expensive. And so some states and the Trump administration has actually said, no, we're not going to do any more wind turbine building, even though some of these projects are, more than halfway done. Orsted had was supposedly the model for how you build green, good wind turbines, but they've been losing money right and left in the Massachusetts area, in Rhode Island, in a lot of other areas where frankly, the costs of building the wind turbines are skyrocketing, and the time it takes to get permissions, like years and years and years, add to the costs too. So they're just not economically feasible, and they probably aren't going to be a long-term solution, certainly not for the next 3 years, as long as Trump is running the show. And frankly, wind turbines aren't also that reliable. In fact, in Maryland, where I used to live, they had wind turbine projects, but they've canceled them, and instead are hoping the nuclear power plants will stay online. And then a few other little thoughts I had was, I talked a little bit about it previously about the Spanish. We had that power outage in the Iberian Peninsula where Spain and Portugal basically went dark, and it was because guess what they were doing? They were testing their solar PVs, and guess what? They shorted out the system, and so basically Portugal and Spain went dark, and it caused all kinds of problems. And they now realize that what happened was the operators were basically testing it, and they overpowered it, and they just basically turned it on, and their test failed, and so they got all kinds of blackouts. The Iberian blackout escalated into the grid instability that triggered automatic protections and caused a rapid system-wide loss of supply across Spain and Portugal, where they are trying to rely more on renewable energy. But there's also a growing movement in Spain to say, don't you dare, we want to keep our nuclear power plants. So people are gradually coming to the realization that these renewable energy technologies that we were promising were going to save us in the future are really not. They're really not a solution at all. In fact, more than ever, they're creating problems. And they're also expensive. And so not only are they not lowering the economic bills of electricity, they're actually making them go higher because it's more expensive, but also they're not contributing to the grid reliability, and they're not actually solving the problem of how do we get good, clean energy to people who need them whenever they need it. So the findings were thought that they haven't quite figured out what caused the Iberian blackout, but the stories are that it was the grid. The folks were messing around with the system, and it caused this great outage for like 20 something hours. Anyway, I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, and I'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Kathryn Johnson, your host. And today I am talking about energy horror stories. But I also couldn't quite help but notice that Halloween celebrations are actually getting really out of control. And guess what? It used to be Christmas lights would cause spikes in energy bills. Now it's Halloween celebrations. In fact, a company called Payless Power actually did a survey of 1,000 Americans to find out what they're doing for Halloween. And they actually found out that people are paying more to put their Halloween decorations up. And it's becoming kind of like the holiday lights fight. You know, they're trying to keep up with the neighbors. And it's, surprise, surprise, creating electric bill increases. So much so people are actually foregoing going out and having and other things, other disposable things like streaming movies to actually pay for not only their decorations, but the electricity associated with them. So it's really crazy. I mean, I remember in Halloween, when I was a little one, it was not that big a deal. And it wasn't really expensive to go get a costume. And usually it was a bed sheet or a pillowcase and somebody cut a couple holes in it and I was a ghost. I think I was a ghost for a lot of times. And I think my daughter was a witch every single Halloween for years. So you don't have to spend all this stuff. And it's just insane. But anyway, according to this new study, 64% of Americans have put up or plan to put up Halloween decorations this year. Now, in full disclosure, I have never been a fan of Halloween because I was traumatized as a little one and I just can't stand it. So it's not my favorite holiday, but now it's even becoming even more popular, which is so weird to me. The 21% are skipping the tradition like me, but those who decorate actually have a 14% increase or $23 more in October for their lights. And it's what? A one-day thing, not like Christmas, which is a whole season. Inflatables and lights are the biggest reasons people are buying things, but they can actually do LED lights, which I would support. And also, I used to sell LED holiday lights. That's a much better solution than the other kinds. So here's where the most popular Halloween decorations are. LED lights. I know you can't read it real well, but the point is that people are, basically stringing up lights at Halloween. I guess they change into red and green maybe at Christmas, but these they're basically also saying that Gen Z is known for going all out and leaving their lights on for 8 hours. The late night glow is real. 35% of Americans leave their lights on overnight. I think we have some more graphs here about how much people are spending on Halloween. It's just insanity, though. I mean, don't we have better ways to spend our money? Most common ways to control energy consumption is basically I know it's hard to read, basically putting up LED lights is really the solution if you're going to go all out and decorate your house and leave your lights on 24 or 8 hours a day or whatever. There's some also, they're using LED options. Over 1/3 use LED lights and controls, which makes sense. And even though Halloween's like a maybe 1 or 2 day holiday, I would urge you to actually think about holiday lights, using LED holiday lights instead of the traditional lights if you're going to have your house decorated from the day after Thanksgiving till the day after New Year's, which is quite a long period. They're also they're spending though, if you put in an LED light, you'll save about $39 over the season. And the pressure is absolutely in place to also say 64% people want to actually decorate for Halloween. Anyway, there's also another increase in costs in Halloween is people have Halloween parties. And that increases costs of food and hosting and also its own power surge with coming from cooking and baking, 69%, heating, and leaving the outdoor lights on even longer, 39%. And even one of the thing is there are ways to basically reduce it, like doing LED lights or maybe not putting up the lights for keeping them on so long. Other solutions are, which I love, are timers and controls on your lights. So they're only on for maybe 2 hours, like maybe during the optimum trick-or-treating time and not all night long and bothering the neighbors. And also using, you can create your own do-it-yourself little LED tea lights. You put them in pumpkins or whatever, and you can use those to light it up as opposed to safer than candles, and also creates light. And solar, and they can also use solar powered pathway lights, which are very common and popular for year round lighting. So the point is, you do not need to go all out to celebrate Halloween. And I don't understand the increased emphasis on this. And it's so weird because it's such a strange, spooky holiday. And is there a more? I think there was another graphic on this. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it's just a real weird holiday in the first place. And I don't understand why all of a sudden in the last 10, 15 years it's become so popular. And I don't know, maybe, it's just people are just tired of the dark and they want to have something fun to look forward to. And Halloween is the end of October. I prefer celebrating All Saints Day and Reformation Sunday, being a Lutheran, but we'll see what happens. The other thing is that people really don't understand how to save energy, and they need to have a better understanding of using LED lights and things like that. So we'll see how it goes. And to John's point, I think some of the adults are getting really kind of too carried away with it. And then the other thing is, we live in some pretty spooky times, scary times. I mean, we have terrorist attacks, we have assassinations. I don't know why we want to continue to scare our children with ghosts and clowns that have murders. And it's lost the fun little nostalgic Halloween that I remember as a child, where I'd go to the fire station, firehouse, and bob for apples. And, we didn't have to worry about razor blades in them. And we would be able to have trick-or-treating in our neighborhood. And we knew everybody and we knew our neighbors, and it was fun and it was safe and it was much more wholesome. Now it's gotten to this creepy, you have all these, a whole month of scary movies. I think this is one of the reasons our society is so depressed, because we're watching all these violent movies under the guise of Halloween slasher films that aren't necessarily healthy for our mental health. They aren't necessarily good constructive entertainment. I mean, I love a good Hitchcock movie, but I can never watch Psycho. So I think that scaring yourself has become a little too scary for people. And I think this Halloween light craze is just nuts. Do we have a time cube? Okay, I guess we don't. Oh, a minute. Okay, so again, there's lots of ways you can celebrate Halloween in a fun, safe way. I prefer to have my regular lights on and just give the little kids a couple pieces of candy and let them go on their way. But I'm not a big fan of scaring children or scaring adults, for that matter. And I don't understand this dark view of Halloween and how it's become so popular. And it's to me, it creeps me out. So I'll be glad when Halloween is over. Let me just say that. I'm Dr. Kathryn Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me, and I'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom. purpose, passion, power, and peace, all quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. And this part of the show, I really would love eventually to get call-ins, but I got comments, and you can send comments too. And I always want to do something really fun during this part because, frankly, it's more fun that way. So one of the things I found out when I was prepping for my show this week was that AI is not equal. Not all AI is equal. And it turns out that AI, now we know that AI creates the need for huge data centers that create the need for huge energy consumption. But guess what? AI also creates carbon emissions and CO2. Some AI prompts require 50 times, emit more than 50 times more carbon emissions than others. So the way you use AI can also affect your carbon emission output. So you're not supposed to eat grass-fed beef, and you're not supposed to have really complicated AI prompts, apparently, to reduce our carbon emissions. Okay, but basically they said that this study compared large language models, or LLMs, that's like ChatGPT and chatbots, and they basically saw that, that these large language models, I'm just going to say the ChatGPT types, generate a lot of carbon emissions because they have to think about answers to the questions we pose them. And so and basically they face a trade-off. Well, you can get a good question, but if you don't have the bigger ChatGPT models, the answers aren't always correct that AI gives you, which is something we should also be cautious of. Talk about a horror story. I like ChatGPT for certain things, but I don't trust it for my regular use and news and my work. Generative AI models that include LLMs consume an estimated, wait for it, 29.3 terawatt hours of energy a year. I can't even comprehend how much that is, but it's a lot of power plants. It's a lot of energy, roughly equivalent, here it is, to Ireland's average energy consumption. So our AI consumption is equivalent to the entire countries of Ireland's consumption. That's outrageous. And relatively little scientific research has been done on that because we don't want to know how bad it is. So they have two different kinds that the study looked at. Cognito, which is a reasoning model with 70 billion parameters, and another one which is Quone 70, which is only have 7 billion parameters. Surprise, surprise. The one with 70 billion parameters uses way more energy to figure out its answers, but it was also more precise. So 85% of their questions were answered correctly, and it generated 1.34 kilograms of carbon dioxide. The Quone, the other one, is a model that only has 7 billion parameters, only emitted 27 grams of carbon as opposed to 1.2 kilograms. So basically, it's a third of what the other one did. But it was also only a third correct. So the trade-off is, do you want an robust AI system to answer your questions and to make sure that it's correct, but it's going to use 3 times more energy than the less rigorous one? I don't know why you'd need a study to figure it out that 70 billion is going to be more accurate than 7 billion, and that it's going to use more energy, because computers have to quite think. They have to, what they do is translate into tokens and things. So people speak in words, computers speak in codes of ones and zeros, and they translate them into tokens, which are words or parts of words that are then converted into a string of numbers. And every token requires energy to produce and results in carbon emissions. So the whole process of AI is very carbon intensive. So every point of accuracy, it's like the law of diminishing returns, comes with a markedly higher carbon cost. So this study basically says that reasoning enabled models generate more tokens for answer. And that this grad student in Munich who's doing the study said that reasoning models that are looking at really complicated algebra problems are thinking much more and using much more energy, which makes a lot more sense. And that instead the other models, which aren't thinking, they're just factual questions. It's a lot less fast. It's a lot faster to find out the answer, and they don't have to use as much energy to figure out the solution. The problem is that the less rigorous ones are also not always correct. So the accuracy and climate impact, I love this, of AI depends on the subject matters. And basically, factual history questions are smarter. So understanding the patterns that people use can also help control our carbon emissions. What? Supposedly, we're only supposed to ask easy questions to chat AI. That doesn't make ChatGPT. That doesn't make any sense. The whole reason we're having AI is to solve these really complex problems, right? And then they're also cautioning, to be a good AI user, you shouldn't just use it randomly or for fun. You should actually only use it in purposes to solve difficult problems, even though those difficult problems will use more energy. Again, I just think this is so silly. It says that using the smallest model should meet your needs and not out of boredom or joking around. So basically, they're saying to be a good, responsible citizen and limit your AI carbon emissions, you need to pick better models, smaller models, and not ask hard questions. And it's going to cause otherwise it's going to cause carbon emissions. Well, apparently nobody else is thinking this way, because people use AI for all kinds of things, including complex algebraic equations, I'm sure, and also easy stuff, which is why it's becoming a concern to me as a person who thinks about learning and insight and knowledge. If students are relying on ChatGPT to write their papers, or ChatGPT to do the analysis, then where are they learning the analytical skills they need to survive? And isn't that a bigger concern to me? Are we losing our ability to reason? And are we losing our ability to think critically, especially in the generations that rely on ChatGPT, where perhaps it's better to teach them writing, reading, cursive writing, analytical thinking before we get a computer involved? I know I'm old-fashioned, but if you don't know how to think critically in the world, maybe that's what they want. Maybe they don't want us thinking critically and questioning why in the world are we worried about AI carbon emissions, and why shouldn't we be worried more about other things, like why renewable energy doesn't work. So I do think that this reliance on AI isn't just creating an energy concern. It is also creating a literacy concern and an educational concern. And that's where I think we're going to really have problems. I don't care less about the energy consumption and more about the ability of people to reason correctly. And I see AI being adapted into curriculums in schools and grad programs. And I know it's a tool like Excel, but it's a very powerful tool. That Excel, at least you have to have the ability to think what you want to put in. ChatGPT thinks for you. And how do we know if what they come up with is correct? Because sometimes it isn't. So just another little scary idea that maybe we shouldn't rely on AI to answer our questions, and good old book learning is probably good too. I'm Dr. Kathryn Johnson. You're watching The KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. And today I'm talking about energy horror stories, but I have a solution. And in a shameless plug for my book, Your Energy Savings Handbook, 7 Easy Ways to Save Energy and the Planet, I'm basically doing an excerpt from my chapter on slaying energy vampires. So if you want to buy it, you can go to my website, johnsonconsults.com, and on BookBaby, or it's also available, I believe, on Amazon. But BookBaby's cheaper. So anyway, if you... So one of my favorite commercials or marketing campaigns that one of the utilities ever did was talking about the energy monsters hiding in your house. And they had like that monster, and they created these really fun little graphs or magnets of refrigerator magnets, ironically. And then they would have like the refrigerator look like a monster or the air conditioner look like a monster. And I just thought that was such a clever ad campaign. And of course it came out during Halloween, but every single year you'll hear about energy vampires long about now. And what I'm talking about is these things that people leave plugged in all the time and don't realize they're using energy, even though they're charged, like your charger on your computer. So a 2020 study, and this is from my book, found that the average American has access to more than 10 connected devices. And these are the energy monsters or the energy vampires that surround the typical homeowner. Their household electronics that we use all the time account for up to 20% of our energy use. And all of that is energy use that you don't need to have on all the time. You don't need to keep your toothbrush plugged in all the time if you have an electric toothbrush. You don't need to have your coffee pot plugged in. It's a silly stuff, but it's these kinds of energy vampires that suck away and cause energy bills to rise. There's also this proliferation of household electronics and digital devices that have increased plug load energy usage across the country around U.S. homes. And plug load are anything that is plugged into the wall. So you think about it. If you have a TV, especially a big screen TV, or you have a gaming console, or you have a television, or one or two or three, or you have a video player, or you have stereo equipment or sound bars or whatever those things, anything that plugs into a wall is called plug load naturally, and it can actually increase your energy bill. And because nobody thinks about it, it's like an area of energy waste. So according to more recent studies in my book, U.S. households own about 4 digital devices, including high definition TVs, interconnected computers, internet connected, and smartphones. They spend 60 hours a week consuming content all these different ways. And in addition to more devices, they actually have more choices when they have access to, shifting and say DVR it and go back later and all the streaming. So all that stuff adds up to energy bills. In the rapid adoption of a second screen has fundamentally shifted traditional TV viewing habits. Now we don't just watch them on the TV, we watch them on our phone, we watch them on our other internet connected TV, which I have at my house. They now use smartphones and tablets as natural extensions of their programming. And these are also plug load devices. And this actually created a huge increase. They say that most of the time appliances stay plugged in and are turned off, but they're not unplugged. And that continues to draw power off in the off state. Hence, they're called phantom loads or vampire or standby energy use. And they can actually increase your energy bill by 10%. So here I was talking about how you can, your Halloween lights can increase your energy bill during October about 23%. Your standby plugged in devices, even though they're not charging, can increase your bill every month by 10%. This has created a whole new market, an opportunity for utilities to actually target plug loads. And they've done really interesting programs. Some of which I've evaluated and been part of is where you're basically targeting customers. So in Denmark, for example, when they bought a big screen TV, they included a power strip with it to help them plug in the power strip, and that reduces the energy consumption down to a minimal, like 1 watt or something. So this is a brilliant idea. And a lot of utilities are using plug loads, power strips, manufactured by a few other companies out there that actually do reduce your energy consumption significantly. This advanced power strip actually provides power for clusters of equipment like TVs, DVD, video games, and audio products, and they actually do reduce that phantom load. And believe me, I've done enough studies on these power strips to categorically say yes, power strips do reduce energy consumption. It also depends, however, how often the customer leaves the devices plugged in. If some customers don't like it plugged in, they turn it off. But yes, it's a behavioral component to it as well. But there are actually proven, I've done many of these studies that actually document that if you use a power strip correctly, you will reduce your energy consumption. And you can probably check out with your local utility if you can get one for a free or reduced price. But the other thing is that these appliances aren't just turned on. They also kind of like are on, and they're using power even though you don't need them. For example, they have the U.S. Department of Energy's LB&L lab saw that even these energy vampires can cost as much as $200 a year. That's a lot of money. Now, as I said in my book, that's a scary number. That's enough energy to power 11 million homes. So these energy vampires are not just something to scoff at. They actually do exist. And what are they? Energy vampires? Well, they're easy. They're the ones that are hiding in plain sight. They're the electronics that you see in other smart devices with built-in clocks and digital displays, the ones that have ovens and microwaves. I'm not recommending unplugging your ovens or microwaves, but I'm saying that those are energy vampires. The TVs, thermostats, smart thermostats, have their screens on continually. And the device has an internal clock like a coffee maker that's programmed to start brewing coffee at 7 a.m. or whatever. And if it's activated by light, then a night light can actually cause energy draw as well. So the way to survive this is their televisions, computers, refrigerators, electric toothbrushes, kitchen appliances are all vampires lurking in your house and are going to steal your energy bill, raise your energy bill. And it's really surprising to me how easy it is to say, okay, well, I want to, reduce my energy bill. But a lot of people don't think it's what your mom told you. Turn the lights off when you leave the room. Unplug stuff you're not using. I always unplug hopefully I remember today to unplug my toaster and my automatic hot water maker, because one, it's a fire hazard, but also, I don't need to have that on all day. And I don't even know if my toaster needs to be plugged in. I think probably not. But you can look at other things too. If you're not using your air fryer, why keep it plugged in? If you're not using this equipment, or better yet, don't worry about turning it off. Just get a power strip. They're about $20-$30, so you can get them pretty cheaply. Plug all your stuff into that, and then be confident that you're going to actually be able to slay and get rid of those energy vampires that lurk in our homes, and people don't think about it. If you want to know more about other things, this is just a highlight of my book, you go check it out at my website, johnsonconsults.com, and write energy hand saving. Here, there it is, and it's actually on my website, available for sale. But I'm Dr. Kathryn Johnson. You're watching The KJ Show, and I'll be right back.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson. And today I always like to wrap up my show with something fun. And I decided to go back to something that isn't scary at all. Some of these ancient dog breeds that have come into our world and have made the world better. So I'm going to talk about some of these oldest dog breeds out there and how they're still really being using and people love them. And I actually have a couple of them. So the first one is the oldest dog breeds are still basically being used all over the country. This is an Italian Spinoni. It's a big, friendly dog. Isn't he cute? It's part of the gun dog group. They like to hunt, and they've been actually in Italy back to the 13th century. The Clara Farrell, who runs a kennel club historian, says as gun dogs, these jobs were originally bred for finding and retrieving game. So they have a tough, shaggy coat, which is ideal for wet, marshy ground, and a thick woodland that they worked, and ancestries they are more likely to be scent hounds from France and Italy. So basically these are hunting dogs that are very popular in Italy, and they've been around for a really long time. Now the second one I'm going to say in full disclosure is a Glen of a Mall Terrier. I have 2 of them. They are a very rare breed. Apparently Glens are considered a vulnerable native breed. And the reason I want to do this is I have a Glen. I have 2. One looks just like that. Another one that's Wheaton. But Bonnie had to have surgery last week. And so I was really worried about my little Glen, which is turning 8 next week. But they are wonderful dogs. They're tough. They were bred. It's basically the Welsh Corgi met the Irish Wolfhound and created this breed. They're not supposed to bark, but they do. Mine do. They're not supposed to. They're really good what terriers do. They catch animals, they dig from underground, and they also are very fearless. Well, Barley Hops isn't. Tenacious and very, very strong. They came from the rugged mountains of Ireland, and although they never had a huge population, they are very popular in Ireland and also very popular in parts of the Massachusetts where there's a lot of Irish people. But I got my dogs because, frankly, they're just, to me, the perfect dog. The ones who don't bark. My Barley Hops barks, but he's okay. Another one we have is a sheepdog. This I would think that this almost looks like a Mountain Pyrenees, but they're calling it Marimana sheepdog. I think it looks like a Great Pyrenees. Same sort of thing though. These dogs basically protect flocks, sheepdogs, and properties, and they've been carrying out these protective duties for more than 2,000 years. And they're still very popular. These days, they are sometimes also used to protect endangered animals from predators, which I think is a great use of these dogs. And then the last thing is, this is a Canadian Eskimo dog. And I was in Alaska a while ago, and we went to see the Alaskan sled dogs or Eskimo dogs. And they're very similar to these kind of dogs. And these Eskimo dogs are actually really trained. They love to pull. They have great stamina. They are the Inuit sled dog. They have been basically ancestors made it possible for the Inuits to basically go around and survive the tundra. They have exceptional strength, and now they're saying that the Canadian Eskimo dog isn't as popular or is declining, but the ones that I saw in Alaska that are owned by the Forest Service, these dogs are happy as can be. They can't wait to pull their sled, and in fact, they use them preferring over snowmobiles because they don't need to. They don't run out of gas. And then when they get tired, they all fall together in a heap and they keep each other warm, and they love the snow. And these dogs love to run. And so if you're an Eskimo dog or a sled dog in Alaska and you don't want to run, they find you a home. But the ones who, even when they retire and go home with their natural forest people, they still like to want to run. So these dogs are really doing what they're trained to do and what they love to do. And I always think it's nice to give a shout out to the animals that make our world better. I'm very happy to say that my dog Bonnie is doing much better. But this moment kind of made me realize how important dogs are for our mental health, as well as protecting us and helping us create a wonderful community and civilization. So I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You've been watching The KJ Show with me. And I hope you enjoyed this week's story, Energy Horror Stories. I'll come back next week with another fun episode. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Katherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.